My name is Elena Mercer. I was 24 years old when a landlord looked me in the eye and told me I owed more than $360,000. I laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because it made absolutely no sense. I had never owned a credit card, never financed a car, never taken out a loan, never signed a mortgage. I paid for everything in cash because that was how my parents raised me. And yet, according to the credit report glowing on my laptop screen that rainy Thursday night, I was drowning in debt older than some of my friendships. Debt that began when I was 14 years old. That was the moment I discovered someone had spent nearly a decade building an entire financial life using my name, my social security number, and my future. And when I called my mother to ask why, she laughed. "Oh, honey," she said lightly, like we were discussing borrowed Tupperware instead of federal crimes. Family shares everything. That sentence destroyed my life more thoroughly than the debt ever did. Because until then, I had still believed there had to be some misunderstanding, some clerical error, some stranger. But strangers don't know your birthday. Strangers don't know your social security number. Strangers don't forge your signature with the exact same curl in the letter E your mother taught you when you were 6 years old. Family does. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, the place where women tell the truth about betrayal, survival, and the moment they finally stopped protecting the people hurting them. If you're listening right now, tell me where you're from and what time it is in your city. And if you've ever had a family member cross a line and then call it love, stay with me. Because this story gets worse before it gets better. I grew up in a tiny town outside Dayton, Ohio. The kind of place where everybody waved at everybody, and gossip traveled faster than weather reports. My mother, Sharon Mercer, worked the customer service desk at a fabric store near the interstate. My father, Dean Mercer, bounced between warehouse jobs after the manufacturing plant closed down when I was in middle school. And then there was my older brother, Bryce. Bryce was easy to love. Football captain, loud laugh, natural confidence. The kind of son parents bragged about in grocery store checkout lines. I was quieter. I liked numbers, patterns, organization. At 15, I kept color-coded budget sheets for my babysitting money. At 16, I built spreadsheets for fun. Nobody thought that was charming except my algebra teacher. My parents used to joke that I was the serious one. But looking back now, I think seriousness is what happens when a child grows up sensing instability before anyone says it out loud. Money in our house was never discussed directly. It floated through rooms like smoke. "We're tight this month. Maybe next paycheck. Don't ask your father right now." Those were the phrases I grew up hearing. And somehow, despite constantly being tight, my brother always had what he needed. Bryce got braces in 8th grade. Bryce got a pickup truck at 16. Bryce got his college tuition paid almost entirely by my parents. I got speeches about responsibility. When I asked for money for a school trip to Chicago sophomore year, my mother sighed dramatically and told me we simply couldn't afford luxuries right now. 3 weeks later, she bought a brand new leather sectional. I remember staring at that couch while eating ramen noodles after school and realizing something I couldn't yet explain. In our family, money always appeared for the people they valued most. And I was not one of those people. Still, I loved them. That's the tragedy of children. You can be treated unfairly for years and still defend the people doing it because children are biologically wired to believe their parents must have a reason. I graduated near the top of my class and earned a partial scholarship to the University of Cincinnati. Not enough to cover everything, but enough that I could survive if I worked. So I worked. Coffee shop mornings, library evenings, weekend receptionist shifts at a gym. While Bryce attended parties and football games debt-free, I counted grocery dollars down to the cent. What I didn't know then was this. While I was juggling 3 jobs to afford textbooks, my identity was already funding an entire business. At 24, I got hired as a junior data analyst for an insurance company in Columbus. It was my first real adult job. $49,000 a year. A tiny cubicle, a badge with my name on it. I cried in the parking garage after my first paycheck, because for the first time in my life, I thought stability had finally started. Then I applied for my first apartment. The building wasn't glamorous. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, cheap carpet, tiny kitchen, but the sunlight through the living room window made it feel hopeful. I submitted the application on a Sunday. By Wednesday afternoon, the property manager called. "Ms. Mercer," he said carefully, "we're unable to approve your application." I assumed my income wasn't high enough. Then he added, "Your credit report raised significant concerns." My stomach dropped. "I think you should review it yourself," he said gently. "It's extensive." Extensive. I'll never forget that word. I opened my laptop that night at my friend Naomi's apartment, because I was crashing on her couch temporarily while apartment hunting. Then I pulled my credit reports. Equifax first. 52 pages. 52. By page 3, I stopped breathing normally. By page 12, my hands were shaking. By page 20, I felt cold all over. There were credit cards, vehicle loans, collection accounts, civil judgments, and one business name repeated over and over again. Mercer Celebration Rentals, LLC. Registered owner, Elena Grace Mercer. Me. The company had been created when I was 14 years old. 14. The filing date made my blood run cold. August 11th, my birthday. The same day my parents had baked me a funfetti cake and given me a $20 craft kit because they said money was tight. Somewhere between the candles and the presents, someone had filed forged business documents using my identity. I remember staring at that date on the screen while Naomi talked in the background about takeout options, completely unaware my entire life had just split into a before and after. The analyst part of my brain took over before the emotional part could. I made spreadsheets, columns, dates, balances, patterns. The same address appeared on every account, my parents' house. Different birth years were used to bypass age restrictions. 1995, 1996, 1997. Someone kept aging me up on paper, so lenders wouldn't question why a teenager was applying for business credit. The total debt across all accounts, $362,418. I sat frozen on Naomi's living room floor until nearly 3 in the morning. Then I called my mother. "Did you open accounts in my name?" Silence. 3 seconds. Then laughter. Not nervous laughter, not guilty laughter, dismissive laughter. "You're acting like we robbed a bank." My entire body went numb. There's over $300,000 tied to my social security number. We were going to fix it eventually. Eventually. Such a harmless little word for something that destroyed my future before it even started. My father got on the phone next. "Don't be dramatic," he snapped. "We did what we had to do to survive." Survive. Interesting choice of language. Because what they really meant was this. They survived by feeding my future into a shredder. Over the next several weeks, my life became paperwork. I discovered my mother had opened 8 credit cards under my identity. There was an SUV financed using my social security number. A Tahoe. Registered entirely to her. She drove my stolen identity to church every Sunday. I found tax returns filed under my name going back 7 years. 7. According to the IRS, I had earned over $80,000 one year running an event rental company, while I was actually shelving books in a university library for $11 an hour. Refund checks had been deposited into a bank account belonging to my mother. Every layer I uncovered exposed another lie underneath it. And the worst part? My brother knew. When I confronted Bryce, he admitted he had known parts of it. Parts. Like someone claiming they only partially knew a body was buried in the backyard. He knew his tuition had been paid using business revenue tied to my identity. He knew our parents used my name because their credit was ruined, and he accepted it anyway because it benefited him. "You didn't even use credit," he told me defensively. "They figured you'd never notice." I still remember the silence after that sentence, not because I didn't know what to say, because I suddenly understood I had never truly been seen as a person in that family. I was an asset, a resource, a backup plan with a social security number. Naomi begged me to talk to a lawyer, so I did. Attorney Vanessa Reed specialized in consumer fraud and identity theft. She reviewed my documents for almost 10 straight minutes without speaking. Then she looked up slowly and said, "This is one of the most severe cases of familial identity fraud I've ever seen." Familial identity fraud. There it was, a legal term for what my parents called love. Vanessa explained what would happen next. FTC affidavit, credit bureau disputes, IRS reports, and one thing I dreaded more than everything else combined, a police report naming the people responsible, my parents. I spent 8 days trying to convince myself there was another way. There wasn't. Without formal accusations, the debts would stay tied to me permanently. I would spend decades paying for crimes I committed before I could legally drive. Meanwhile, my parents had remodeled their kitchen, bought patio furniture, taken vacations, and paid Bryce's tuition with money attached to my stolen identity. I went home one final time before filing. I told them I was visiting for the weekend. My mother cooked roast chicken. My father watched baseball. Everything looked painfully normal. Saturday morning, while they went grocery shopping, I searched the garage filing cabinet. And there it was, the LLC paperwork, my forged signature, my social security number, and the notary stamp belonging to my mother's best friend, Donna Pierce. Aunt Donna, the woman who hugged me at graduations, the woman who called me sweetheart. The woman who signed fraudulent documents claiming I personally appeared before her at 14 years old. I photographed every page. Then I sat through dinner that night while my mother smiled across the table at me like she hadn't spent nearly a decade stealing my identity. Sunday evening, I drove back to Columbus. Monday morning, I filed everything. FTC complaint, police report, identity theft affidavit, credit bureau disputes. I typed my mother's name into official criminal documents with shaking hands. Then I hit submit. And just like that, there was no undoing it. 2 weeks later, the FBI called, not local police, the FBI, because the case involved tax fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft of a minor, and fraudulent federal tax returns. The investigation became federal almost overnight. Special Agent Carmen Ruiz interviewed me for nearly 4 hours. She showed me bank records tied to the LLC, mortgage payments, luxury furniture purchases, vacation rentals, restaurant charges. My mother had used the business account like a personal ATM. Then Agent Ruiz pointed out something even worse, structured cash withdrawals designed to avoid federal reporting limits, another crime. Every time I thought I had reached the bottom of what they had done, another floor collapsed beneath me. When the FBI interviewed my parents, my mother called screaming, "You're sending your own mother to prison." No, her actions sent her there. I just stopped protecting her from consequences. That distinction matters more than people realize. The family fallout was brutal. Aunts stopped speaking to me. Voicemails poured in, calling me selfish, cruel, heartless. My father texted, "You destroyed this family." My brother texted, "You're dead to me." Interesting how families built on secrets always blame the person who tells the truth instead of the people who created the lie. I changed my phone number after that. For the first time in my life, my family could not reach me. And despite the grief, I finally felt safe. Months passed. Subpoenas, interviews, grand jury proceedings. Then came the indictments. My mother faced multiple federal charges, including aggravated identity theft and tax fraud. My father faced conspiracy charges. My brother was charged as an accessory after investigators proved he knowingly benefited from the fraudulent business revenue. And Donna, sweet Aunt Donna with the potato salad and church hugs, was charged for fraudulent notarization and conspiracy. The morning they were arrested, Bryce called me from outside the federal building. "They took Mom in handcuffs," he whispered. I stared out Naomi's apartment window at the gray Ohio sky and said the only sentence that mattered anymore. "I was 14, Bryce." Silence. Because there is no defense against that sentence. No justification, no financial hardship explanation, no emotional manipulation. I was 14. In the end, my mother pleaded guilty. So did my father. My brother received probation and restitution obligations. Donna lost her notary license permanently. My mother received federal prison time, and even then, even after conviction, she still blamed me. She wrote me letters from prison, insisting she had only done what was necessary to keep the family together. No apology, no accountability, just blame wrapped in self-pity. That was when I finally understood something important. Some people would rather destroy their own children than admit they were wrong. About 16 months after I filed the reports, the fraudulent accounts finally disappeared from my credit profile. One by one. The collections vanished, the vehicle loan vanished, the judgments vanished. My credit score climbed slowly upward until one day it crossed 700. I applied for an apartment again. Same building, same layout, same sunlight through the living room window. This time, the property manager smiled when he handed me the keys. "Congratulations, Miss Mercer. You're approved." I sat alone on the floor of that empty apartment for almost an hour. No furniture, no decorations, just silence. And 2 brass keys in my hand. Keys attached to a lease signed with my real signature. For a life that finally belonged to me. People still tell me I should forgive my parents. Maybe one day I will. But forgiveness and accountability are not the same thing. And protecting someone from consequences is not love. It's surrender. My parents spent 9 years treating my identity like family property. Now, I protect it like something sacred. Because it is. And if you take nothing else from my story, take this. Check your credit. Check your child's credit. And never let anyone convince you that betrayal becomes acceptable simply because it came from family.